Now, if the person next to you is telling you about something that happened at work today, tell them to shut up. The person next to you is talking about how their relationship is on the rocks, tell them to shut up. If the person next to you is not talking about Bob Richardson, tell them to shut up. Hey, that worked.
I need a few tissues for this one.
I know.
Okay, this we discussed with Annette after Bob died, and we've got this kind of process going. We're trying to raise some money for a record to be made in Bob's honour. I work for a not-for-profit label in Australia called Wantok, W-A-N-T-O-K.
All right, I got a Bob margarita.
Give it to the man with the microphone.
Who want that Bob margarita?
This guy did.
Jake.
No, he had a couple. He had a couple.
Oh my God.
I'll have it.
We can talk about margaritas.
Yeah. And then a few people have already donated some money. So we're trying to come up with enough budget to make a record that would be the kind of record that Bob's name would sit beautifully on. So it'll be it'll be a record from an artist in one of the Pacific Islands. It could be Papua New Guinea, it could be Vanuatu, it could be the Solomon Islands, it could be the troubled nation of West Papua that doesn't have independence and is under Indonesian military rule. It'll be a record that kicks against the pricks, because that's what Bob was like. It'll be a record by an artist that wouldn't be able to make a record except for the fact that all of us are going to chuck some bucks in for it. So have a chat with Annette about that. It's probably the best way to see where you can go to find how to donate to this Bob Richardson record. Bob was, he often came down to Australia and saw Indigenous Australian artists and saw artists from the Pacific, and he was all about it. He was all about the different sound, the different voice, a voice that wasn't heard that much. And we all think that this would be a wonderful thing in his honour. As Annette said before, Bob was all about the music. Many people here would have been at gigs with Bob. He wanted something, he didn't want Bryan Adams, he didn't want Lionel Richie.
Billy Joel, right?
He didn't want Billy Joel, but this record that we're going to make in his honour is going to be something that'll stand, it will be his legacy, and it will stand the test of time, and it'll make a difference to the world. So check out Annette. I'm going to hand over now to my oldest friend in the world and Bob's younger brother Andrew to speak to you. Thank you. He's taller than me. I was supposed to be taller than my brother, but I never got there. I want to break up when I do this. You just have to put up with me. Well, Bob Richardson. Bob was the last Robert Richardson. It's the tradition in the Richardson family to name the firstborn child Robert. And this goes back 5 generations that I know of, and probably before that. My grandfather's name was Robert, and my great-grandfather, and all the rest of it. In fact, my wife was really worried because Bob didn't have any children that our firstborn child was going to be named Robert. But we had girls, so that was okay. But there is, so he's the last one. He's the last Bob Richardson. And he kind of broke the mold. I've got my mother on Facebook. FaceTime, whatever it is. Yeah. So, there you go. So she might have a few comments as I go along. I normally get things wrong when those days. Anyway, Bob and I are kind of alike in some ways, but we're very different in others. So, I was the skinny one, he was larger. He would argue with my parents, my mother in particular. I tended not to. I tended to go with the flow. I managed to get away with more than he did. He would stay to the end of the night. I'd go home early. He was actually born in a blizzard in New York, and I was born in a heat wave in Adelaide. Maybe that explains something, I don't know. But we both had a passion for music. In fact, Bob started learning the guitar before I did, but he quickly gave it up, and in fact my first guitar was his old one, which I had for many years, and unfortunately it was stolen out of the back of a car when I was about 20. I'm just going to tell you a little backstory. I'm not going to go on and read all this stuff because you'll get bored. There's a couple of things that happened in Bob's life that were kind of significant to me and to him, and they started when we moved to New York. He was born here on an earlier trip, but he came back to New York when I was 6 and he was about 10, from Australia. So he had what, maybe a few years back in Australia, from the age of 4 to 10, 6 years, that's all. So when we arrived back, he was the guy who, even at an early age, organized everything. He organized the stickball matches, all the sports and stuff, and then he would allow me to play with the older kids. I was publicly nicknamed Scorch in those days, but I put up with it because I was playing with the older kids, and he was always in charge. And I'll tell you a little story about what happened that changed our relationship when we were kids, but that'll come later. Basically, when Bob was 18, he'd had a failed year up at Syracuse University, and we came back to, the family decided to move back to Australia, but Bob didn't. Sorry, is that better? Yeah. Okay. All right. That's good. So when we came back to Australia, Bob didn't, and the difficult thing for me was, he told me 6 months before he told my parents, which was about 2 weeks before they were leaving. And he had a plan because he was an American citizen. He was born here. So he was 18, he was of age in those days, so he could move back. He got a job at Caswell Massey's, which was a mail-order cosmetics firm. And that started all his mailing, the Bob box that would arrive in Australia at least twice a year. So it came from that. But you know, it was a difficult time, and I remember dropping him off at the YMCA in Manhattan. It was really surreal. I remember when my mother's face, you know, tears were streaming down his face. And my father was resigned to the fact at that stage, and just seeing him there with all this stuff in this tiny little room, you know, and yeah, crazy. But now I want to go on to the women in Bob's life. Now, the first woman in Bob's life was my mother. Obviously.
This might be interesting.
Yes. Now my mother's listening to this right now, and she might have some things to say about it, but we'll. Yeah, I'm going to sugarcoat it. Mom. That's okay. Mom and Bob locked heads during high school. There was no two ways about that. He was a wild, rebellious kid, and would often leave the house for days on end. And Mom would be ringing the neighborhood trying to find out where he was, you know. But the one time that was infamous was the famous house party. He was 17, his senior year in high school. And some of you who were here, I think Steve will remember this one. And
I think Bob Markowitz will remember this one as well. It was legendary. I was away on a swimming trip up in Poughkeepsie, and we came back, and I remember the expression on my mother's face was just, her jaw dropped when the front door didn't have any door furniture on it. There was just a hole where the doorknob used to be, and she just pushed the door open to see this house in a state of disrepair. But the great thing about that was I became a legend. Because my brother had they had police circling the block, they had a band, you know, everything got a little bit out of hand. I'm not going to go on too much further. I just, he did make peace with Janet, of course, and I think he's mellowed in the last, well, he mellowed in the last couple of years, especially, and was always there for her, you know, every time he came out to Australia annually. And the other person, now the next woman in, my God, Bob loved women. But if you know what I mean.
Yes, he did.
So obviously I can't say anything without, I have to talk about Gail. Now, Gail was the one other person that I met that could almost keep up with Bob at the end of the night. And I remember a couple of times in the East Village, a place called Banditos, if people remember that place, where they basically pour drinks down your throat in the middle of the night. Yeah. But I'll just read you a little thing, because up until the day Gail died, I can't remember my brother crying. His grief was colossal, but his friends gathered around him and kept him going. I remember Steve was there, amongst others, and but his health really suffered. And then came along Annette. I truly believe that you saved my brother's life. I got to a point where Bob's health had deteriorated so much in the first year that he almost lost sight in one eye. He had a blood clot behind his eye. But you gave him a reason to live. I mean, you really did. So Bob became Bob and Annette, really.
Unibob.
As far as our family was concerned. Bob was wired and as intense as ever. And Annette's not so intense, but warm and eccentric in her own way.
Eccentric, I like that.
Yeah. There we go. Take that. So there's lots of stuff that I could say about the rest of it, but I'm just going to jump to a little incident it was about. And I'm going to cry.
We have tissues.
You should try.
So this is what changed my relationship with my brother. When I was a kid, I was probably 10 or 11. I was the happy-go-lucky kid playing baseball until you squeezed out the last hours of the days with the neighborhood kids. But I had a falling out with the neighborhood kids, and I remember I was over some stupid baseball game or something, and I went off, and they shunned me for about 3 months. And then I went out to all these kids and I tried to reconnect. I invited them around for a party to try to, break the ice. Not one of the kids showed up. Not one kid. And so I was shattered. And prior to that, my brother didn't take much notice of me. And he would come home I'd come home from school and he'd kind of, beat me up like older brothers did. It was kind of a sport for him. But when he, but when this incident happened, his whole relationship changed with me, and he included me with the older kids. And I was, like I said before, he called me Squirt publicly, but privately he called me his secret weapon when you know, I did have a decent outside shot in basketball. You know, and to this day, I've followed my brother, and in that respect, you know. So, just wanted to say, look, I'm going to finish on this. I was trying to write a song, but this is as far as it got. So, just to say, he was a fighter, a cynic, rant and rave, dissertation, explanation, what the fuck, aggression, obsession, widely read, a winner, a grinner, stubborn, fucking infuriating, but eternally loyal to the ones he loved. Argumentative, energetic, a stayer, and principled to the end, and he never backed down. Bob was all these things, and he was also tender and kind, with a heart bigger than mine. He always had my back, and I like to think I had his. We are brothers with a love and a bond thicker than the blood that runs through our veins, and I will miss him to the day I die. Thanks.